Hi everybody, I'm Mike. Welcome to the shop. So today I have a super simple project. It's a 2-bowl pet food stand, and we're going to make 2 of them out of this one board. I went into SketchUp, got all my measurements figured out so we could utilize this board to its fullest. As usual, this is one of those profit-making projects, I call it, where we want to lower the cost so we can maximize the profits. So I'm utilizing pine, at least for these prototypes. And there are going to be 2 different styles. So we can try a stained version, which is what I'm calling the super fancy, with routed edges. And then I'm going to have a rustic side, or rustic design. And I'm going to utilize the weather wash product to age the wood. And we'll see how that works. So let's get cutting. Okay, so all our pieces are down to the rough cut. The tops have been cut to their finished size. I was forced to do that only for the fact that I needed to build the runners, and so I was utilizing the edges of the top, the scrap of the top, to make our runners. So these all need to be cut to their final length. So of course I need to double check, make sure I get my measurements correct, because that's where the project could get messed up if I make especially a stringer. If I make a stringer too short, that's where the problem is. The feet are going to be a little bit less than the width of the top anyways, so you wouldn't notice if that was a mistake. But this will ruin everything. On the rustic one, I need to get that one cut to its final, to all the pieces cut, in order to put the weather wash on it. Since I don't want any raw wood, you want to make sure it's all equally aged. So we'll take care of that right now. Okay, I got the wood prepped, and it's ready now to apply the weather wash to it. So weather wash is a tannin-based reactive stain, and this particular one is meant for pine, and it's got no VOCs, non-toxic, and it's water-based. So the application is pretty simple. They want you to just drench the wood. It literally says that in the instructions. Do not wipe off excess. Let it sit for about an hour, depending on the wood being used. It might take a little longer, but you have about 60 minutes is what's required to get, hopefully, the desired effect you're looking for. And once we've received our desired effect on the stain, as long as we wait a minimum of an hour after applying this, we can then put their varnish on. So that's nice, and they recommend doing up to about 3 coats. Sounds like a pretty standard varnish, but once again, it's also water-based and easy cleanup, anti-yellowing. So it sounds like a pretty decent product. So we'll have to see. Okay, I'm finished with the weather wash, and it came out really nice. I like the look. It's going to look even probably better once I put the clear on there. So now let's glue up the panels. And as I was stating before, part of a skill builder project is to practice different techniques. And one of the techniques that you can benefit the most by is joinery techniques. Whatever you want to use. Now, the only dilemma with this small scale of a project is that most of this joinery is going to be cut out. For instance, if I put the bowls on here and we space them in a fairly even manner here, that looks good. As you see here, this whole metal section is completely going to be cut out, so it's not even touching. Same with down here, and so the only place that you actually have wood connecting is right here in the middle and on these two little ends. Not a whole lot holding this together then. We could just clamp this, glue clamp it, and leave it as be. And I think that's what we're going to do. Okay, so we got our board out of the clamps, and as you can see, the finish turned out very nice. One thing I wanted to point out, a couple little notes here, is, and it's expected, it's a water-based product, so when you apply it, it is going to raise the grain, which then you have to make that decision, should I sand it? And I recommend you would. You don't have to. If it's a rougher wood, a rough sawn wood, then you obviously wouldn't sand it. Now, so I did that, and the beauty of it, I haven't sanded the top actually. I worked on the base, and what I did notice is when you sand it, it gives you a much more even silvery finish. But one side sort of benefit, if you're going for that truly rustic look, is when you're sanding it and you hit the edges, it lights them up just a little bit, and it almost gives it like an outline, which is usually the desired effect with rustic projects. You see that with a project that's been painted and you sand all the edges until you burn through the paint. Well, you get that same exact effect with this weather wash. It doesn't seem to me that it goes very deep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually apply another finish. I'm going to basically disregard the instructions that it doesn't say anything about applying additional coats. However, one of the first things they want you to do if you're preparing the wood is it can't be a wood that has any stain or any sort of finish. Now, I don't know how true that is to their own product, so we're going to see. Okay, so I think after that final test to see if I could darken the wood further by adding a second coat, did not work. The next thing will be to put on their varnish. And I need to first put the top onto the base, and then we'll do that. So we can get a test of their varnish as well. Okay, well, we're in the home stretch. We're just about done. I want to take a moment to go over a few things with you. And one of the issues, I guess you could say, came up is I did spend a great deal of time, designing these, figuring out the measurements and what worked best to utilize that piece of wood. The one thing I didn't do is spend very much time on the order of operation. Order of operation as far as cutting and what order to cut pieces, and then on the joinery. Because in my mind, and as I stated, the goal was, at least my personal goal, is I try to build everything without metal fasteners. Unless it's absolutely necessary or will be beneficial to the durability or strength of the product. Something like this, you don't really need screws. It's not a load-bearing product. It's so small. And so I decided to try to do it with dowels. Well, what I quickly realized, as many would already know this, the smaller a project gets, the less forgiving it is with errors. So I did struggle a bit with the doweling when I put these bases together. So what quickly became evident to me is the main idea of this project is something you could do very quickly and batch out a bunch of them, and as I stated before, lower the cost so you can increase the profits. Well, with my process of doing the doweling, first you got to wait for the base to dry when you've clamped and glued it, and then when you put the top on, you've got to clamp it and let it dry, so that takes an extra day. So if you're doing half a dozen of these, you need 6 days for the top to dry, and maybe not so long for the bases, but if you wait just an hour till the glue's set. But being how fragile these are, I would wait overnight as well. So it's going to take you 3 weeks to make this, when you should honestly be able to do these in a day. So I'm reneging on what I originally said, and I'm going to go ahead and put screw fasteners on here, because then that way they will also act as clamps themselves. And even my process on finishing. Originally, I was supposed to wait till I was always going to paint the base first. Since it's going to be painted, this would be stained. And then I was going to mount the top and then stain the top. Well, I was sitting there impatient, waiting for all this glue to dry, so I went ahead and stained the top. Well, then my concern is that, well, then I'm going to clamp it, I might smear or somehow affect the stained finish. So then I start putting clear on it. And then I'm like, well, now I don't want to damage the clear finish, so that's a process I need to rethink. So I thought I'd point that out to you guys, give you some tips of order of operation, very important. As much so, if not more, than the material itself. So that was quite embarrassing how quick that worked. I don't know what I was thinking of doing it the other way. Not even 5 minutes and you're done. Now I can put the finish on it and call it done. Done and done.